scolding myself to be responsible. What can I do differently? Can we all ask ourselves this question with honest humility? And it took me a long time to come back to this piece, and I've been thinking about it, and I wrote about it, and then I said, what's the point? And over the last week or so, my posts have been getting negative comments and comments that rebuke my positions. And, I'm keeping most of those comments that are not personal attacks. And those comments have actually pushed me to think about my responsibility. And when I speak about us, when I speak about Americans, I'm all primarily talking about what I have absorbed from being an American. When will Americans take responsibility for putting Donald Trump in the Oval Office for a second time? I feel somewhat responsible, although I'm not one of those independents and free agents who voted for Trump with hopes of lower cost of living and demonstrated their impatience on a grand scale. Those who voted for Donald Trump thinking that he would reduce inflation were impulsive and short-sighted. But those who voted for him to racially profile vast swaths of the population and create a white Christian fascist state are getting everything they voted for. And some of them are gleeful about it. This is something that we have to accept as a country. The reality before Donald Trump came back into office was that the Biden administration pulled America back from the brink. That administration inherited a COVID-ridden America where the economy was in free fall. The inflation that came along with the pandemic lasted years, and President Biden worked constantly to bring it down. He cut taxes on fuels, incentivized renewables, and went after companies for price gouging, all to bring down the cost of living. He signed the Infrastructure Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, and gun safety legislation for the first time in 30 years. And his efforts were working solidly. Inflation was consistently going down while our economy continued to move forward. Clean energy boom contributed to a big segment of the new post-pandemic climate-aware economic and social era, a short-lived one. Biden didn't have the chance to remedy the wealth disparity because he first had to stabilize the country. From the pharmaceutical industry to energy to chips manufacturing to social and physical infrastructure, President Biden went full speed into scaffolding a collapsing economy. And he was successful. The United States economy, despite being among the worst COVID-impacted nations, broke the global trend and started growing by leaps and bounds. Energy costs were going down. Cost of living was slowly and steadily coming down. But they weren't where Americans would have liked them to be. And that is where American entitlement kicked in. And this is what Donald Trump exploited. We demand convenience. We as Americans demand rectification of problems quickly. We live in a world of self-importance that obscures the bigger picture. And when I say we, I do it as well. We feel entitled to lower gas prices and cheap, fresh food. Why not? And we all wanted all of that now, much like a child would. When none of those things come easily, they're all products of negotiations, trade deals, and the massive consumer market that makes America such a powerful economic force. By working together with our allies and with engaged citizens, our country moved headfirst into a post-COVID world as the leader that we are. We had the lowest inflation among all advanced nations. Our military preparedness was at its peak. Our global presence and cloud remained strong. Our goodwill and soft power still could move mountains, but not anymore. Because a decisive chunk of Americans wanted all their conveniences faster than Biden could provide, they believed Donald Trump's empty promise to lower the cost of living. They believed Donald Trump's empty promise of lowering the cost of energy. And then there were those racist, xenophobic, and hateful tropes that drove far-right extremists to Donald's arms. Remember, racism is ubiquitous in American life, and politicians often exploit race to rally voters. While our racial history informs and galvanizes the left, our racist legacy distorts reality and unifies the far right. Donald succeeded resoundingly in distorting reality and unifying the far right with displays of open bigotry and hate. He welcomed the far right and had dinner with racist propagandists. So while economic reasons existed for many to choose Donald over VP Harris, race played a very big part, as did gender. And contrary to his central promises to bring down the cost of living and energy, Donald Trump is currently sabotaging America's renewable energy industry, which would have significantly lowered the cost of energy. While the world moves forward with renewables and affordable energy, Donald Trump's regime has decided to double down on fossil fuels. This is short-sighted, to say the least. While Donald may not personally be victim to the climate catastrophe that is currently ongoing, countless around the world and throughout the country have experienced the result of bigger storms and more extreme and unpredictable weather. At a time like this, Donald is not only pushing us back environmentally, but promoting environmentally harmful fossil fuels and cutting funding for federal emergency assistance and the National Weather Service. These steps don't make Americans safer, and neither do they bring down the cost of energy or bring good-paying jobs to areas that are depressed around the country. So don't expect the cost of living to go down anytime soon, because Donald's regime's racist, xenophobic immigration and tariff policies, inflation has begun to tick back up again. And this time, President Biden isn't standing by to help bring it down with sensible laws and regulations. Economists aren't optimistic about where America stands economically. The Federal Reserve and many economists have publicly said that the country has entered a stagflation, an economic dystopia where inflation goes up while job availability and wages stagnate. And you know what? For these and many other reasons, we should find some blame for ourselves in getting the country to where it is today. Because had enough of us gone the way of progress and inclusion, we wouldn't be gearing up for protest rallies to keep our basic health care and our very republic itself. You may not agree with me on any of this, And that's all right. That is your right. But it is my opinion that if we don't take some responsibility for the unaware, exclusive, convenience, consumer, and capital-focused culture we have built collectively, and we never acknowledge that Donald Trump is a manifestation of all those worst American vices, our republic will never be able to escape from this dark place where we find ourselves. I have been asking myself for the past 10 months what I could do differently. And I'm not looking at the picture correctly to see whether I'm looking at the picture correctly. Do majority of Americans really want what Donald Trump is doing? Many say they do, but are they the actual majority? Nobody knows, nor will we know until the elections. But now, even our elections seem under threat, both in court and on the ground. Dominion Voting Systems is now owned by a far-right company. Democratic governors are fighting in the courts and legislatures to find ways to counter unconstitutional redistricting being implemented by Republican governors at the direction of Donald Trump. Governor Pritzker of Illinois has warned that Donald's military deployments and federal overreaches into Democratic-led states are designed to morph into federal police during elections and intimidate people at polling booths. What Donald can do with federal agents and federalized militia should scare everybody. None of our rights are secure if even one is infringed upon. None of us are safe even if one of us are illegally detained. And now we live in a horrific reality where an unknown but more than zero number of American citizens that have been detained by federal agents without their right to counsel or due process of law. So today, federal agents may pepper spray inflatable frogs and shoot priests to infringe upon First Amendment rights. And you may even laugh because your troops pepper sprayed a frog's ass and shot a priest. But tomorrow, that same fascist state can very well come into your home and take away your guns, depriving you of your Second and Third Amendment rights. If you think your rights to bear arms is secure in a fascist regime, you will be disappointed. Nothing and nobody, except for the supreme fascist leader, has the power to designate who bears arms in their empire. If Kavanaugh stops, newly coined short form for racial profiling during police stops, become the routine policy of ICE agents, we'll rapidly lose our Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable searches and seizures. Citizens and organizations have already sued the federal government for past and ongoing violations of First and Fourth Amendment rights. They won't be limited to immigrants. Federal agents have already picked up, assaulted, and detained American citizens while marauding around the country in the name of cleaning our streets and reducing crime. Local and state authorities handle day-to-day operations to reduce crime in their neighborhoods and states every single day. Our society does not need a federal army to keep peace. It isn't economical, and it sets a precedent our founding fathers rejected when they drafted and the states ratified the Third and the 10th Amendments. So please take responsibility. Please introspect on what you could have done differently or what you can do better this time around. It may very well be that you did everything you could and voted for VP Harris. And if you are one of those citizens, yours is the turn now to be leaders to bring more people to the Democratic cause. One thing I did after our candidate lost was that I opened up to listening to some voices in the manosphere. From Joe Rogan to Andrew Schultz. I even listened to Charlie Kirk. In my college days, I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh on AM radio while driving. It gave me their vantage point and reasoning, their lies and redundant inundations. Listening to these programs didn't change my mind because I tethered myself to reality while simultaneously going down their rabbit holes. Their opinions strengthened my fervent opposition to their ideas, and knowing their perspectives strengthened my ideological position. Talk radio inundates people more effectively than any other source. Podcasts and other outlets that allow drivers to listen while driving is a huge source of information for many drivers. There's no better captive audience. Progressives need to build that media ecosystem in the information and digital age. Far-right influencers have been doing it for decades. Liberals didn't do the groundwork. We relied on mainstream media. But now with media capitulations, progressives and liberals need the community provided by independent media, podcasts, and talk radio. We all can and should make changes to accommodate for the extreme danger our republic faces today. Even a little change in perspective, a little more forgiveness, and a little less hatred can go a long way. Incremental action towards positive change has the best odds of succeeding over time. Remember, on the fundamental issues a vast majority of Americans agree. We all want our constitutional rights preserved. We all want a lower cost of living and affordable housing. We all deserve affordable health care. We believe Social Security is an earned benefit. We believe in basic education. We believe that the federal government has a responsibility to keep the homeland safe. We agree that our military should not be attacking our own cities. We agree that nobody is above the rule of law. A vast majority of us agree on so much. And the time is now to make our voices heard. With that said, thank you for listening. This went a little long, but I've been thinking about this for quite some time. And I think that I need to take responsibility in how I approach and look at occurrences and call them out for exactly what they are. I believe that that's what I've been doing, and I've even opened up my perspective to far-right thought leaders to be able to see whether they're making a point or not. And majority of the time, it is bigotry and racism and hatred and xenophobia and sexism and misogyny that drives these far-right ecosystems. But you get to understand where they're coming from and find logic to weave them out of those fallacies over the course of time. Even Joe Rogan right now, for example, is distancing himself from Donald Trump and breaking with the Trump regime on a lot of issues. And 2020, hindsight is 2020, but Right now, we have a chance to stop and look at things on a real perspective and respond to the threat that our republic faces in a real, substantive, reality-based way. Thank you so much.